Commander Hyun-woo Park stood in the back of the massive council chamber, trying to look like he belonged there. The room was huge, with 12 different sections for 12 different alien species. Each section had its own weird smell, strange sounds, and aliens that looked nothing like humans. Hyun-woo was the only human in the room. His job was simple: watch and listen. Earth wanted to know what the other species were planning. What he heard today would change everything. The meeting started with the usual boring stuff: trade routes, mining rights, border disputes. Hyun-woo almost fell asleep until the Valian representative stood up. Valians looked like giant blue crabs with too many eyes. This one's voice sounded like breaking glass. "We must discuss the human problem," the Valian said. Hyun-woo's blood went cold. "Problem? What problem?" a reptilian Zephyrin hissed in agreement. "They adapt too quickly. In 50 years, they went from simple space travel to matching our technology. In another 50, they will surpass us all." "It is not natural," added a floating ethereal, its gaseous body shifting colors. "No species should learn so fast. No species should change so much." The council chamber filled with angry sounds. Clicks, hisses, roars, and other noises Hyun-woo could not understand. But the message was clear. They were scared of humans. The council leader, an ancient Celestian that looked like a walking tree made of crystals, raised one branch for silence. "The question before us is simple. Do we allow humanity to continue growing stronger, or do we act now, while we still can?" Hyun-woo felt his heart racing. This was not just fear. This was a threat. A new voice spoke up. It came from the abyssal section, where creatures from the deep, dark spaces lived. "There is a way," the voice whispered. It sounded like wind through a graveyard. "We have kept it locked away for good reason. But desperate times call for desperate measures." The whole chamber went quiet. Even the usual background noise stopped. "You speak of the void spawn," the Celestian said slowly. "I do," the abyssal replied. "The chaos entity. The thing that unmakes reality itself. We used it once before against the Titan Empire. They thought they were unstoppable, too." Hyun-woo had never heard of the Titan Empire. That was probably because they no longer existed. The debate that followed was heated but short. Species after species voted yes. Only 2 voted no. In the end, 12 voices agreed. The chaos entity would be released near human space. Hyun-woo slipped out of the chamber as quietly as he could. He had to warn Earth. 3 days later, Do-young Kim was working late in his lab on New Busan when the emergency signal came through. He was studying alien technology, trying to figure out how it worked. It was his favorite hobby, taking apart things and putting them back together. The message from Hyun-woo was short and scary. "They are sending something called the Void Spawn, chaos entity, unmakes reality. Get ready." Do-young called the colony. "Governor, right away. Within hours, every human on New Busan knew what was coming. Most people would have panicked. Most people would have started running. Humans were not most people. Instead of evacuating, the colonists started preparing. Scientists set up recording equipment. Engineers built stronger bunkers. Soldiers loaded their weapons, even though no one knew if bullets would work against something that could unmake reality." Do-young worked with Dr. Mi-young Lee, the colony's best scientist. She had been studying quantum physics and weird space phenomena for years. When Do-young told her about the chaos entity, her eyes lit up. "This could be amazing," she said. "Think about it. A being that can change the basic rules of how things work? We could learn so much." "It is supposed to kill us all," Do-young reminded her. "Maybe," Mi-young shrugged. "But what if it does not? What if we can understand it? What if we can work with it?" Do-young stared at her. Only a human would hear about a reality-destroying monster and think research opportunity. The entity arrived on a Tuesday morning. The sky turned purple first. Then the ground started shifting colors. Trees began growing downward into the air. Gravity stopped working properly in some places. Most of the colonists watched from their bunkers as reality broke down around them. But not Do Young and Me Young. They put on protective gear and walked right into the chaos zone. Amazing, Me Young whispered, taking readings with her equipment. The fundamental constants are fluctuating. Space and time are becoming fluid. A building near them suddenly turned into what looked like soup, then became a flock of birds, then turned back into a building. But now it was upside down and made of glass. We should probably run, Do Young said. Are you insane? Me Young replied. This is the discovery of a lifetime, maybe 1,000 lifetimes. That was when they saw it. The void spawn itself was not what they expected. It was not some giant monster with teeth and claws. It looked like a shifting cloud of dark energy, constantly changing shape. Sometimes it looked like a storm, sometimes like a geometric pattern, sometimes like nothing at all. It moved toward the colony's main settlement. Everything it touched changed. The hospital became a forest of metal trees. The school turned into a lake that flowed upward. The power plant became a mountain of singing crystals. But the strange thing was, people were not dying. They were changing, yes. Some colonists now had extra arms or could see in more colors than before. Others found they could walk through walls or float in the air, but they were still alive, still human. It is not trying to kill us, Do Young realized. It is trying to make us like it. Chaos beings, Me Young said, her voice full of wonder. It wants to turn us into chaos beings. The void spawn reached the center of town. It paused there, as if thinking. Then it did something unexpected. It spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It sounded like the universe itself was talking. Why do you not flee? Why do you not break? Me Young stepped forward. Do Young tried to grab her arm, but his hand went right through her. She had become partially transparent. Because we are human, she said simply. We do not break. We adapt. The void spawn pulsed with what might have been surprise. Impossible. All things break when touched by chaos. All things unmake themselves when faced with the impossible. Not us, Do Young said, walking up beside Me Young. He noticed his feet were not quite touching the ground anymore. We have been dealing with impossible things our whole lives. We call it Tuesday. For the first time in cosmic eons, the void spawn felt something it had never experienced before. Confusion. These strange creatures were not behaving correctly. They should be screaming, running, dissolving into madness. Instead, they were taking notes. The entity tried again, pouring more chaos energy into the area. Reality became even more unstable. The laws of physics gave up entirely and went home. But the humans just adapted faster. Children started playing games that involved changing the color of light. Adults figured out how to use the unstable gravity to build impossible structures. Scientists began cataloging all the new ways matter could exist. This is not how it is supposed to work, the void spawn said, and for the first time in its existence it sounded uncertain. Me Young smiled, even, though her face was now partly made of starlight. Welcome to humanity. We specialize in things not working the way they are supposed to. 3 weeks after the void spawn arrived, Captain Taeho Choi stood in what used to be the colony's military headquarters. Now it was a building that existed in 4 dimensions and changed color based on who was looking at it. The walls, sometimes, showed windows into other planets, and the floor occasionally became a view of deep space. Taeho had adapted better than most. His left arm could now phase through solid objects, and his eyes could see probability streams flowing around people like colored ribbons. He was still getting used to the fact that his coffee cup sometimes turned into a small bird that sang opera. "Status report," he said to his staff, who were scattered around the room in ways that defied normal geometry. Sergeant Jinwoo Han spoke first. He was floating upside down near the ceiling, which was currently showing a view of Earth's moon. Sir, we have completed the first round of voluntary chaos exposure for military personnel. Results are remarkable. Define remarkable, Tae-ho said, even though he already knew the answer would be weird. 97% adaptation rate, no casualties, enhanced capabilities across the board. Jinwoo dropped down to the floor, but landed soft as a feather. His body had learned to ignore gravity when convenient. Lieutenant Subin can now walk through walls. Corporal Namho can see 30 seconds into the future. Private Hye Jin can exist in 2 places at once. Dr. So-Jin Nam entered the room by stepping through what looked like a painting on the wall. She had become the colony's leading expert on chaos physics, mainly because she was the only one brave enough to stick her head directly into reality distortions to see what happened. "Captain," she said, her voice echoing strangely because she was speaking from 3 different dimensions at once. "I have completed my analysis of the adaptation process." "And?" Tae-ho asked, though he suspected he knew what she would say. "Human. Neural plasticity is the key. Our brains are designed to adapt to new situations. When exposed to chaos energy, instead of breaking down, we rewire ourselves to function in unstable reality." So Jin held up a device that looked like a smartphone crossed with a kaleidoscope. "I can now predict and measure chaos fluctuations. More importantly, I can teach others to do the same." Tae-ho nodded. "What about weapons?" Jinwoo grinned. His smile was now literally bright enough to light up the room. "Sir, conventional weapons work fine in chaos zones, but chaos-enhanced weapons work better." He pulled out what used to be a standard plasma rifle. Now it hummed with dark energy and seemed to bend light around itself. "This beauty can shoot holes in space itself. The bullets travel through reality, gaps, and hit targets from directions that do not exist." "Show me," Tae-ho said. Jinwoo aimed at a practice target across the room. When he fired, the shot seemed to disappear completely. Then the target exploded, even though nothing had visibly hit it. The bullet had taken a shortcut through twisted space. "Outstanding," Tae-ho said. "What about defense?" Dr. So-Jin stepped forward. "Traditional shields and armor are useless in chaos zones, but we have developed something better." She gestured to Jinwoo, who was wearing what looked like normal military gear. "Chaos-adapted armor does not block attacks. It makes the wearer impossible to hit." "Demonstrate," Tae-ho ordered. Another soldier fired a practice round at Jinwoo. The bullet passed right through him as if he was not there, but Jinwoo was still solid enough to pick up objects and walk normally. "The armor teaches the body to exist in multiple probability states," So-Jin explained. "Attacks hit the versions of you that are not really there. Only friendly contact connects with the real you." Tae-ho was impressed, but not surprised. Humans had always been good at turning problems into solutions. "What about the entity itself? The void spawn?" "That is the interesting part," So-Jin said. "It has been trying to communicate more. I think it is confused by our reactions. Most species either die or go insane when exposed to chaos energy. We just get better at using it." As if summoned by their conversation, the air in the room began to shimmer. The void spawn manifested as a swirling cloud of dark energy with what might have been eyes. "Humans," it said, its voice coming from the walls themselves. "I do not understand you." "Join the club," Tae-ho replied calmly. "We do not understand ourselves most of the time either. I was created to unmake civilizations, to return order to chaos, to destroy those who grow too powerful." The entity pulsed with frustrated energy. "But you do not unmake, you remake. You take my chaos and make it yours." So Jin stepped closer to the entity. Her scientific curiosity was stronger than any fear. "Can you tell us how chaos energy works? We would like to understand it better." The void spawn paused. In its entire existence, no one had ever asked it for information. Usually, beings just screamed and dissolved. "You wish to learn?" it asked. "Always," Jinwoo said. "Learning new things is what humans do best, even if the knowledge is dangerous." "Especially." Then, Taeho added, "dangerous knowledge is the most useful kind." For the first time since its creation, the void spawn felt something like curiosity about these strange creatures. It began to explain, in terms that human minds could barely grasp, how reality could be bent and shaped. The humans listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. They wanted to know everything: how to control chaos energy, how to focus it, how to use it as a tool instead of a weapon. Meanwhile, far away on the Hegemony Council Station, emergency meetings were being held. Reports from the new Busan colony were not what anyone expected. The chaos entity was supposed to destroy them, the Valian representative said, its multiple eyes blinking in confusion. Instead, they appeared to be becoming friends with it, the Zephyrin reported. "Our long-range sensors show the entity is teaching them how to manipulate reality." "This is impossible," the ethereal floating in its containment sphere said. "No species has ever survived contact with a void spawn. No species has ever adapted to chaos energy." "Humans are not like other species," the Celestian Council leader said slowly. "We made an error, a terrible error." The abyssal representative, hidden in its dark corner, whispered, "What have we done?" Back on New Busan, the first chaos-adapted human military unit was ready for action. They called themselves the Reality Guard. Jinwoo led them in their first training exercise. The exercise was simple: capture a flag from the other side of a chaos zone where the laws of physics changed every few seconds. The zone contained areas where time ran backward, gravity pointed in random directions, and solid objects became liquid without warning. For normal soldiers, it would have been impossible. For the Reality Guard, it was just Tuesday. Jinwoo's team moved through the chaos zone like they were born there. When gravity reversed, they ran on the ceiling. When time went backward, they moved in reverse too, arriving at their destination before they started. When matter became unstable, they became unstable with it. They captured the flag in 12 minutes. The previous record, set by the colony's best non-enhanced soldiers, was never. They had never even come close to completing the course. "Remarkable," Sojin said, watching from the observation deck. "They are not fighting the chaos. They are dancing with it." Taeho nodded. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need to start the Chaos Integration Protocol immediately. Every military base, every colony, every ship." "Sir?" his aide asked. "What should we tell them about the risks?" Taeho looked out at his soldiers, who were now playing a game that involved juggling small black holes while standing on walls that had decided to become floors. "Tell them the biggest risk is not getting enhanced," he said. "Because once our enemies figure out what we can do now, regular humans are going to look very fragile in comparison." The aide gulped. "And the void spawn, sir? What about it?" Taeho glanced at the entity, which was currently teaching a group of children how to paint with liquid starlight. "I think we just made the galaxy's first chaos deity into our training instructor." The void spawn, hearing this, pulsed with what might have been amusement. For the first time in eons, it was actually enjoying its existence. These humans were fascinating, and they were just getting started. 6 months after the void spawn's arrival, Admiral Yoonji Song stood on the bridge of humanity's first chaos-powered warship. The vessel was called the Probability Storm, and it existed in 17 different dimensions at once. Looking at it hurt the eyes of normal beings, because it was technically several different ships occupying the same space while also being completely somewhere else. "Status report," Yoonji said to her chaos-adapted crew. Her own adaptation had been remarkable. She could now see the flow of cause and effect like a river, allowing her to predict enemy actions before they happened. "All systems operational, Admiral," reported Captain Yujin Kang from the engineering station. Yujin had become humanity's first chaos weapon specialist after she discovered she could convince energy beams to forget what they were supposed, to hit and attack something else instead. Chaos drive at maximum efficiency. Reality anchor systems stable. The reality anchors were important. Without them, the ship might accidentally phase into a universe where humans had never evolved, or where mathematics worked differently. Early test flights had been interesting, but not particularly useful for military operations. Navigation? Yunji asked. We are currently existing in normal space, hyperspace, and 3 pocket dimensions, reported Lieutenant Bo-Ra Joan. Travel. Time to target. Now, yesterday, and next Thursday. I recommend we arrive yesterday so we can set up ambush positions. Yunji nodded. Time travel still made her head hurt, but she was getting used to it. Weapons? Colonel Dong-hyun Lim stepped forward. He commanded the ship's complement of Chaos Marines, soldiers who could walk through solid matter and convince gravity to work in their favor. All weapon systems ready, Admiral. Reality scramblers charged, existence erasers loaded, probability cannons aimed. Excellent. Yunji looked at the main screen, which showed their target. A hegemony border station called Fortress Prime. It was supposed to be impregnable, protected by shields that could stop entire fleets and weapons that could crack planets. The hegemony had made a mistake when they sent the Void Spawn to destroy humanity. They had given humans 6 months to study chaos energy, adapt to it, and turn it into the most terrifying military force the galaxy had ever seen. Now it was time to return the favor. Begin the attack, Yunji ordered. The probability storm moved toward the fortress in ways that normal physics could not describe. It took a shortcut through folded space, slipped sideways through time, and arrived at the target from a direction that did not exist. The fortress's sensors went crazy. Their screens showed enemy ships approaching from above, below, inside their own shields, and from several futures that had not happened yet. What is that thing? The fortress commander, a Valian named Crixtal, asked his crew. Unknown, sir, his sensor operator replied. It appears to be a human vessel, but the readings make no sense. It is showing up as 17 different ships, or one ship in 17 places, or possibly a ship that thinks it is a small moon. Impossible, Crixtal said. Humans do not have technology like that. Sir, the weapons officer interrupted. They are firing. The probability storm's first shot was a reality scrambler beam. It hit the fortress's main shield generator and convinced it that it was actually a fruit basket. The shield collapsed, leaving behind a pile of alien fruit that nobody could identify. The second shot was an existence eraser. It made the fortress's main weapons battery forget that it had ever been built. The massive gun turrets simply stopped being there, leaving confused-looking aliens standing in empty space where their weapons used to be. The third shot was from a probability cannon. It fired a shell that had a 50% chance of existing and a 50% chance of being somewhere else entirely. The shell chose to exist inside the fortress's command center, appearing directly in front of Crixtal's face. Surrender, the shell said politely, or things will get weird. Crixtal stared at the talking artillery shell. This is impossible. Humans specialize in impossible, the shell replied. Would you like to see our really creative weapons? Because we have some that will make your entire species forget how to count. Before Crixtal could answer, Chaos Marines began materializing throughout the fortress. They walked through walls like they were made of air, ignored gravity, and carried weapons that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. Dong-hyun appeared directly in the command center, stepping out of what looked like a fold in space. Good morning, he said cheerfully. I am Colonel Dong-hyun Lim of the Human Chaos Corps. You have approximately 30 seconds to surrender before my soldiers demonstrate why reality is more of a guideline than a rule. How did you get in here? Crixtal demanded. Our shields. Our defenses. Your shields were designed to stop things that exist in normal space, Dong Hyun explained. We do not exist in normal space. We exist in whatever space is most convenient at the moment. To demonstrate, one of his Marines walked up to the fortress's main computer and stuck his hand directly into the solid metal console. He pulled out a handful of the computer's memory cores, which should have been impossible since they were sealed inside armor plating. Your computer passwords are stored in a really obvious place, the Marine said helpfully. You might want to consider better. Security. Throughout the fortress, Chaos Marines were demonstrating abilities that made the alien defenders question their understanding of reality. Some Marines could exist in two places at once, having conversations with themselves. Others could reach into solid walls and pull out whatever they needed. A few had learned to convince enemy weapons that shooting was morally wrong. "This is madness," Krixtal whispered. "No," Dong Hyun said. "This is Tuesday. Madness is what we do on weekends." The fortress surrendered in record time. Word of the defeat spread quickly through the hegemony, but the reports were so bizarre that most officials thought they were jokes or propaganda. "Humans that walk through walls," the Zephyrin military commander said. "Ships that exist in multiple dimensions, weapons that convince other weapons to stop working. This is nonsense." "Sir," his aide replied nervously, "we have 17 different reports saying the same thing, and Fortress Prime has stopped responding to our communications." "Then send the Third Fleet to investigate," the commander ordered. "Real ships with real weapons. These human tricks will not work against proper military force." The Third Fleet was the hegemony's pride. 12 massive warships with enough firepower to glass a planet. They arrived at the Fortress Prime system, expecting to find human ships they could understand and fight. Instead, they found the probability storm waiting for them. "Unknown human vessel," the fleet admiral transmitted. "You are in violation of hegemony space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Yoonji's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Yoonji Song of the Human Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from human space before we demonstrate why your ancestors locked the void spawn away." "Human space?" The fleet admiral laughed. "This is hegemony territory. You have one ship, we have 12. "Actually," Yoonji replied, "you have 12 ships. We have one ship that is pretending to be 12 ships, while also being no ships, while simultaneously being every ship that has ever existed. Math gets weird when you add chaos energy." The fleet admiral decided to end the conversation with weapons fire. All 12 hegemony ships opened fire at once, unleashing enough energy to vaporize a small asteroid. The beams passed harmlessly through the probability storm, which had chosen to exist in a dimension where energy weapons were actually just pretty light shows. "Our turn," Yoonji said calmly. The probability storm fired once. The shot split into 12 separate reality-bending projectiles, each one targeting a different hegemony ship. The first projectile convinced its target that up was actually inside out. The ship folded in on itself like origami. The second projectile made its target forget how to be a solid object. The ship became a cloud of confused particles. The third projectile convinced its target that it was actually a very large fish. The ship began swimming through space, looking for water. The other 9 projectiles got creative. When the chaos cleared, the Third Fleet was gone. In its place were various objects that had once been warships. A flock of metal birds, a giant musical instrument that played sad songs, a small planet made entirely of soap, and several things that defied description. The surviving crews were rescued by human ships and given medical attention. The humans were very polite about the whole thing, offering coffee and apologizing for the minor reality disturbance. "How?" one captured alien officer asked. "How is this possible?" Eugene, who was running the prisoner processing, smiled. 6 months ago, your people tried to destroy us with something that breaks reality. We decided to say thank you by learning to break reality better than you do. This will not end well, the officer said. The hegemony has thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, and we have humans who think physics are more like suggestions, Eugene replied. Plus, we are having way too much fun to stop now. News of the Third Fleet's defeat reached the Hegemony Council within hours. The emergency session that followed was filled with panic. General Hyewan Shin stood in the center of what used to be called Earth Command, but was now known as Reality Operations Headquarters. The building existed in normal space on Tuesdays and Thursdays, in folded space on weekends, and in whatever dimension was most convenient for meetings on other days. Today was Wednesday, so the building was currently floating in a pocket dimension that tasted like strawberries and had a sky made of liquid music. Status report, Hyewan said to her staff, who were seated around a conference table that existed in 6 dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Chang-Min Yu, humanity's leading theoretical chaos physicist, spoke first. His recent adaptation had given him the ability to think in mathematics that had not been invented yet. Project Pandora is ready for deployment, General. We can now create controlled chaos zones on a galactic scale. Explain, Hyewan said, though she knew the explanation would probably make her head hurt. Simple, Changmin said, which meant it was going to be anything but simple. We have learned to create stable tiers in reality that spread chaos energy across entire star systems. Instead of destroying planets, we remake them. Instead of killing populations, we offer them the choice to adapt. Lieutenant Bora Jian, now head of Chaos Reconnaissance, flickered into existence beside the table. She had been scouting Hegemony Core worlds by existing in 17 different locations at once. Sir, Reconnaissance confirms that multiple Hegemony member species are requesting human protection. The Catharians want us to establish a chaos zone around their homeworld to protect them from their enemies. The Nexari have asked for chaos adaptation training for their military. And the resistance? Hyewan asked. Crumbling, Bora replied. The hegemony is falling apart. Half their member species have declared independence. The other half are either hiding or trying to negotiate with us. Hyewan nodded. It was going exactly as predicted. When you give people a choice between joining the oppressors or joining the chaos-surfing humans who could walk through walls and turn spaceships into abstract art, the choice was obvious. What about the original Void Spawn? She asked. Still on New Busan, Bora reported. It has started a philosophy club with some of the colonists. They meet on Thursdays to discuss the nature of existence and share recipes for impossible foods. Hyewan rubbed her temples. Even after months of adaptation, some things still seemed weird. Moving on. What is the status of our creative weapons? Division? A new voice spoke from a chair that had not been there a second ago. Progressing beautifully, said Dr. Sung-Ho Park, head of Applied Chaos Weaponry. He had learned to exist partially outside of time, which meant he often arrived at meetings before they started and left before he came. Our latest creation is the Probability Storm Mk7, he continued. It is a ship that convinces enemy fleets that they never existed in the first place. Very clean, very efficient, very confusing for the enemy. Demonstration? Hyewan asked. Already happened, Sung-Ho replied. Next Tuesday, we will use it against the Hegemony's 5th Armada. From their perspective, their entire fleet will simply never have been built. From our perspective, we will have won a battle that technically never took place. Hyewan was getting better at understanding temporal paradoxes, but this one still made her eye twitch. What about the Omega Protocol? The room went quiet. Even in an organization full of reality-bending humans, the Omega Protocol was considered extreme. Ready for deployment, Changmin said quietly. But I strongly recommend against using it unless absolutely necessary. The ability to convince an entire species that they never evolved. The philosophical implications alone. Noted, Hyewan. said, "File it under last resort options. What about the entities?" This was the really interesting development. The void spawn had not been the only chaos entity in the universe. There were others, hidden away by various species, locked in prisons or sleeping in forgotten corners of space. When they sensed what humanity was doing with chaos energy, they started waking up. Contact established with 7 entities so far, Bora reported. They are curious about us. Apparently, we are the first species they have encountered that treats chaos as a tool rather than a curse. Any problems? The Entropy Whisper wants to learn how to play chess. The Reality Eater has asked for cooking lessons. The Paradox Dancer wants to join our military as a weapons instructor. Bora paused. They find us amusing. Amusing? We are apparently the first mortal species they have met that makes them laugh. The void spawn described us as adorably chaotic to its friends. Haiwan sighed. Humanity had gone from being threatened by cosmic entities to being their entertainment. She was not sure if that was better or worse. "Ma'am," her aide interrupted, "incoming transmission from the Hegemony Council. They are requesting immediate negotiations." "Put it through," Haiwan said. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the familiar crystal form of the Celestian Council leader. But this time, the ancient being looked smaller, dimmer, afraid. "General Shin," the Celestian said, "we request immediate ceasefire negotiations." "Ceasefire?" Haiwan replied. "We are not at war. We are simply existing, and you seem to have a problem with that." "Please," the Celestian said, its crystalline voice cracking. "Our intelligence reports say you have weapons that can unmake entire species, that you can convince star systems they never existed, that you have allied with the chaos entities themselves." "All true," Haiwan said calmly. "Your point?" "We surrender." "To whom?" "We have not declared war. We have not invaded your territory. We have simply been defending ourselves very creatively." The Celestian paused. What do you want?" "For you to leave us alone," Haiwan said. "For you to stop trying to destroy us. For you to understand that humanity does not conquer. We adapt, and then we help others adapt too. And if we refuse?" Haiwan smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then we will demonstrate why the chaos entities think we are adorably chaotic, and you will learn that there are things in this universe much worse than death." The transmission ended. "Ma'am," her aide said, "should we prepare for their response?" "They will try one more time," Haiwan predicted. "They will send everything they have in one final desperate attack, and when that fails, they will truly surrender." She was right. 3 days later, long-range sensors detected the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Every hegemony species had contributed ships. Every weapon they had ever developed was loaded and ready. They were coming with enough firepower to shatter moons. "Orders, ma'am?" asked Admiral Yunji Song, now commanding a fleet of 17 chaos-powered ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Let them come," Haiwan said, "and then show them why humans are the only species that says thank you when given a reality-destroying monster." The battle, when it came, lasted exactly 17 minutes. Not because the human fleet was faster or stronger, but because they convinced the enemy armada that the battle had already been fought and lost. The surviving hegemony forces found themselves floating in space, wondering why they could remember, losing a fight that had never actually happened. Their ships were intact, their crews unharmed, but they all clearly remembered being defeated by weapons that turned their tactics into interpretive dance. "This is impossible," muttered Fleet Admiral Kethvar, the Zephyrin who had led the assault. "We never even fired a shot." "That is correct," came a voice from his ship's speakers. Lieutenant Bora John materialized on his bridge, having traveled there by taking a shortcut through yesterday. You never fired a shot because you already knew you would lose. So you did not bother trying. But we came here to fight. You came here to lose, Bora corrected. Fighting was optional. Losing was inevitable. We just skipped to the end to save everyone time. Kethavar stared at her. How? Chaos energy, Bora explained cheerfully. It lets us edit the script of reality. Your fleet's story was always going to end with surrender, so we just fast-forwarded to that part. Within hours, the surrender was official. The Hegemony Council disbanded itself, admitting that they were no longer qualified to govern anything in a universe where humans existed, but humanity did not conquer their territory. Instead, they did something the galaxy had never seen before. They offered help. Any species that wants chaos adaptation training can apply, Hyawan announced in a galaxy-wide broadcast. Any world that needs protection from traditional threats can request a chaos zone. Any civilization that wants to learn how to surf reality instead of being crushed by it is welcome. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, hundreds of species had applied for human assistance. Not because they were conquered, but because they wanted to learn how to be as adaptable and resilient as humans. The Void Spawn, watching from its comfortable home on New Busan, sent a message to its fellow entities. I have found the most interesting species in the universe. They do not fear chaos, they make it their friend, and they share their toys. For the first time in cosmic history, the chaos entities were curious about mortal beings, and humanity had accidentally become the galaxy's teachers of controlled madness. The age of human dominance had begun. But it was not dominance through conquest. It was dominance through making everyone else want to be like them. 1 year after the hegemony's surrender, President Jae Sung-oh stood in the newly constructed Galactic Cooperation Center. The building was a masterpiece of chaos architecture. It existed in normal space for diplomatic meetings, but could shift into pocket dimensions for private negotiations. The walls showed views of different worlds, and the floor displayed a real-time map of chaos zones throughout the galaxy. Today was special. Today, they were signing the Chaos Accords, the new set of rules that would govern galactic civilization. Representatives of 47 species, Jae-sung said, looking around the massive chamber. 6 months ago, most of you were trying to kill us. Today, you are here to learn from us. I find this amusing. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the chamber. The assembled aliens had good reason to be nervous. They were surrounded by human diplomats who could walk through walls, exist in multiple places at once, and convince reality to behave differently just by asking nicely. Ambassador Su-min-an stepped forward. She had become humanity's chief negotiator, mainly because she could literally see all possible outcomes of any discussion and navigate to the ones she preferred. The Chaos Accords are simple, she began. Rule 1. No species may attempt to destroy another species just because they adapt too quickly. Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. After seeing what happened to the hegemony, nobody wanted to repeat that mistake. Rule 2. Chaos zones are neutral territory. Any species may request protection by having a chaos zone established around their territory. In exchange, they agree to peaceful coexistence with all neighbors. This was the brilliant part of the human approach. Instead of conquering territory, they offered to make territory unconquerable. Dozens of worlds had already requested chaos zone protection. Rule 3. Any species may apply for chaos adaptation training. This training is free, voluntary, and comes with no political strings attached. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. The idea of voluntary anything was still new to most of them. For thousands of years, galactic politics had been about conquest and submission. Humans had introduced the radical concept of cooperation. Rule 4. The Chaos Corps serves as the galaxy's peacekeeping force. Any conflict that cannot be resolved through normal diplomacy will be handled by humans who find physics boring and reality optional. Everyone in the chamber had heard stories about the Chaos Corps. They were the humans who could end wars by convincing the combatants that fighting was mathematically impossible, or by temporarily removing the concept of weapons from local reality. Are there any questions? Sumin asked. The Catharian representative raised a tentacle. What happens if a species refuses to follow these accords? Sumin smiled sweetly. Then they get to meet our really creative peacekeepers, the ones who think conventional warfare is too easy and prefer to settle disputes by turning enemy fleets into interpretive art. No one asked any more questions. The signing ceremony was interrupted by a familiar shimmering in the air. The void. Spawn materialized in the center of the chamber, causing several alien delegates to dive under their desks. "Do not mind me," the entity said, its voice coming from the walls. "I just wanted to observe this historic moment, the first time in galactic history that chaos entities have been invited to a peace treaty signing." "You are welcome here," Jae-sung said calmly. "After all, you started this whole thing." "Indeed," the Void Spawn replied. "Though I must admit, when I was sent to destroy humanity, I did not expect to end up teaching children how to paint with liquid starlight and helping elderly humans grow gardens that exist in 17 dimensions. How is retirement treating you?" Sumin asked. "Wonderfully confusing," the entity replied. "I have discovered the joy of hobbies. Did you know that chaos energy can be used to brew tea that tastes like your favorite childhood memory? Humans are endlessly inventive." After the accords were signed, Professor Woojin Ryu gave a lecture to the assembled delegates. He had written the definitive book on chaos philosophy, titled The Chaos Advantage: Why Reality is More Fun When It's Negotiable. The key to understanding humans, he explained, is that we do not fear uncertainty. We embrace it. When faced with the impossible, our first thought is not "this cannot be done." Our first thought is, "this has not been done yet," which means we get to be the first. A Zephyrin delegate raised a claw. "But how do you maintain order? How do you prevent chaos from destroying your society?" "We do not prevent chaos," Wu Jin replied. "We direct it. We teach our children to surf probability waves instead of being crushed by them. We build our cities to adapt to changing reality instead of resisting it. We make uncertainty our friend. But what about rules? Laws? Structure? We have those too," Wu Jin said. "But our rules are more like guidelines. Our laws are more like suggestions. And our structure is designed to be flexible enough to handle anything the universe throws at us." An ethereal delegate flickered nervously. "This seems chaotic." "Exactly," Wu Jin grinned. "And that is why it works." Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, the new order was taking shape. The planet Kepler 442b had requested Chaos Zone protection after being threatened by their warlike neighbors. Human chaos engineers had arrived and made the entire planet exist in a state of controlled uncertainty. Enemy fleets approaching the world found their navigation systems confused, their weapons convinced they were actually musical instruments, and their crews overwhelmed by an irresistible urge to start a peaceful farming community. The Nexari homeworld had become humanity's first successful chaos adaptation project. The entire species had volunteered for enhancement training. Now their children could walk through walls to get to school, their farmers could convince plants to grow in impossible soil, and their artists created sculptures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The former hegemony core worlds had been transformed into research centers, where human scientists worked alongside alien researchers to explore the practical applications of chaos energy. They had discovered that reality was much more flexible than anyone had previously imagined. But the most surprising development was happening in schools throughout human space. Children who had grown up with chaos energy were developing abilities that amazed even their enhanced parents. 8-year-old Minsu Park could exist in 7 different locations at once and have separate conversations with different people. 10-year-old Hae-young Kim had convinced her bedroom to be bigger on the inside than the outside, creating a space where she could keep pet dragons that were technically too large to exist. 12-year-old Do-won Lee had learned to travel to a school by folding space so that his front door opened directly into his classroom. "They are not even trying to be impressive," reported Dr. Mi-young Lee, who was now studying the next generation of chaos-adapted humans. "For them, walking through walls is as normal as walking through doors. Existing in multiple places at once is just efficient. Convincing gravity to work differently is a standard playground game." "What does this mean for the future?" asked a concerned parent. "It means," Mi-young replied, "that our children are going to make us look like amateurs, and that is exactly as it should be." The galaxy's transformation was not without challenges. Some species struggled with the concept of voluntary cooperation. Others found chaos adaptation difficult and required extra training. A few tried to abuse their new abilities and had to be gently corrected by Chaos Corps peacekeepers. But overall, the new system worked better than anyone had expected. Wars became rare, partly because it was hard to fight someone who could exist in 17 dimensions at once, and partly because most conflicts were resolved by human mediators who could literally see all possible solutions to any problem. Trade flourished as chaos-enhanced ships could travel routes that were impossible for conventional vessels. Art and culture exploded as beings learned to create in ways that defied traditional physics. Science advanced rapidly as researchers could now study phenomena that had previously been impossible to observe. The void spawn, now living comfortably on New Busan, often reflected on how much had changed. It had gone from being a weapon of mass destruction to being a part-time philosophy teacher and full-time friend to humanity. "I was created to end civilizations," it told its human friends during one of their regular tea parties. "Instead, I helped start a new one. A civilization based on adaptation instead of domination, on creativity instead of destruction, on possibility instead of limitation. Do you regret it?" asked Do-young Kim, now the colony's mayor. Regret, the entity pulsed with amusement. "I have discovered friendship, art, tea, and the joy of teaching children to paint with starlight. Why would I regret anything?" As the first anniversary of the Chaos Accords approached, humanity received an unexpected visitor. A massive ship appeared at the edge of human space, larger than anything ever seen before. It was not hegemony technology. It was not from any known species. "Unknown vessel," transmitted Admiral Eun-ji Song from her flagship. "Please identify yourself." The response came in a voice that sounded like the death of stars. "We are the Devourers. We have consumed 1,000 galaxies. We come to add yours to our collection."